Thank you for joining us today. Our topic will be Shopify Migration Mastery from BigCommerce to Better Commerce, co-sponsored by Shopify and EtherCycle. And now I will tell you a little about our speaker. One of the most highly regarded independent consultants in his industry, Kurt Elster, is a senior e-commerce consultant who helps Shopify merchants like Jay Leno's Garage uncover hidden profits in their websites through his e-commerce agency, EtherCycle. However, with over 2 million downloads, Kurt is best known for hosting the unofficial Shopify podcast, where listeners can explore the world of e-commerce entrepreneurship with a focus on the Shopify platform. Thank you so much for joining us for today's webinar, Kurt, and I will turn it over to you.
Oh my gosh, thank you for having me. And I'm committing to that 45-minute limit. I could talk, so I'm setting my timer now. And I appreciate the intro. Yeah, I think the important part there, we've been working on Shopify stores exclusively for 10 years now. We joined the Shopify Partner Program over 10 years ago and just said, why are we doing anything else? And have focused exclusively on supporting Shopify merchants with their online stores, and mainly theme development, theme customization, store setups. But as part of that, there is no way around it. We have to be able to migrate people from other platforms to Shopify. And so over the years, I've done that with a variety of platforms, BigCommerce a lot recently in the last 2 years, Magento, WooCommerce, and some esoteric stuff. But what's interesting about migrations, it's largely spreadsheet work. If you can get the data out in a spreadsheet, you can get it into Shopify. And so we've learned a lot about the process, and I want to go over that with you. Now, why would you want to migrate? It's not a small undertaking. It's plausible, it's doable. You could hire people to do a majority of the work for you. But why do it? And generally it's because people they have a successful business on another platform and they reach a point where they go, this is the bottleneck on our business. Like if there's something stopping us, and by moving to Shopify, we could solve for that, right? And on Shopify, what we find is it's the features that are available in Shopify. It's the Shopify platform, it's the support. But then beyond that is the greater ecosystem, the halo effect of Shopify. All the Shopify partners that are out there, that the apps that they provide, the integrations. There's just a lot of things where life becomes much easier on Shopify because these third-party tools, integrations, vendor services become plug and play. It is just a well-supported platform. And when you have that, that's a lot less time figuring out how to do something or realizing, oh, well, we want to do that, but it's just too hard with our current platform. Those limitations, those bottlenecks go away. And so that's why we say, hey, maybe if you're not on Shopify, your platform may be the biggest bottleneck in the growth of that business. So that's why we want to migrate to Shopify. And in recent memory, one of the recent migrations we did was Navage. And this is an as seen on TV product. It's like an Eddie Pot, except it's powered. It'll suck the snot out of your nose. I love this thing. It's great. By moving to Shopify, they had their best Black Friday ever. We did it Q4, got them on in November, and best Black Friday ever. But it's not necessarily because just purely of our theme, the work we did. There's not some magic implied in there. It's because of the confidence that people get out of it, because of the enhanced growth potential. Suddenly, when you have these tools available to you and they're easier to use and they're confident that you work, your team becomes more confident in what they're willing to attempt and what they're willing to try. And I think that's why you have, we often see these things where after we migrate someone to Shopify, then 6 months later, that business is really starting to scale from where they were prior to Shopify. And I just think Navage is such a great example of that. And so Shopify, for me, it offers that enhanced growth potential. And constant innovation, we see that with Shopify Editions, where they're like, hey, here's the 100 new features we launched in the last 6 months, and this is what's coming. And so that constant, continuous innovation is really attractive if you're on a platform that feels stale. I also greatly enjoy the community. Oh my gosh, the people in and around and working for, on, and with Shopify are a delight. That I have been part of that partner ecosystem. I love it. I think there's just so much there that really enables them to stay ahead of market trends, because e-commerce changes so quickly. So there are some common misunderstandings we hear about Shopify. Is it scalable? Yes, absolutely. There are huge brands on Shopify with thanks to Shopify Plus, commerce components. It will fit businesses of all sizes and scale with you. It is fully customizable in even just with any Shopify theme you get, you have full access to HTML, CSS, JavaScript. If the web development that you are used to, where you say, hey, we could just make what we want. Well, I'm a front-end developer. I didn't want to give up that customizability. Shopify gives you access to all of that. You're not going to be forced into templates that you can't change if you don't want to be. And of course, global presence. Over 1 million businesses on 175 countries use Shopify. But it's got to start with, so we've made the case. All right, you're like, yeah, I get it. Let's go. Where do we start? Where do we begin with our migration? And of course, it starts with evaluating your needs. What do you need to have here? And you want to start with defining features and functionality. First, let's figure out what does our store do? What does it have to do to serve customers, to sell the products, and to fulfill them? If you have that list, then you can figure out, okay, which of these features are native in Shopify? What are apps that, oftentimes you're using an app on one platform that still has the Shopify integration. And so that will make it very easy. And if you go to them and ask, hey, what's the best way to do this? What's the least painful way to do this? Trust me, you're not going to be the first person to ask. They will have advice. They will be able to share it with you, tell you, oh, okay, it's not bad. Here's our SOP. Here's what you do. And if we could figure out that, then you move on to, well, what do we want, right? What does the site not do now? What can it not do that we wish it did, that Shopify can enable us to do? So we've got our wish list on there. And then just as important as those is what we're ditching, right? There may be things that don't serve you anymore, that you don't need, that you want to get rid of, or something you tried that you didn't need. You have, it's like moving, right? As soon as you start packing, you start realizing all the things that could go. And so defining the features, the apps, the integrations that don't have to come with is equally important. Now that's just our scope. And so you could make a list. I find this becomes much easier as a project management effort if you use a spreadsheet for it. And this sounds basic, but I see it almost always these things are expressed in a Google Doc. And I think a spreadsheet's the way to go here, especially with those drop downs. Oh my gosh, because using that spreadsheet makes it very, very easy to bucket things and say, all right, we're keeping it, we're replacing it, we're ditching it. And then as you move forward, all right, has that been done? So little pro tip there on managing this, because you try to keep it in your head, you'll go crazy. If your list is more than 6-7 items, it's not going to work out real well for you. But I think the start with the features, start with the functionality, but that's not the tough part of the migration usually, unless you've got something quite esoteric. But it's the data migration is the thing that scares people, because it's very black box, right? You use a platform and the data's in there, orders, customers, all that stuff. But the reality is the whole thing is just a database. And this does not matter. I don't care what platform you're on. All the data is stored in a database. And a database can be expressed as a spreadsheet. And so really the sole requirement for this data to be migrated is, can you get it out of your current platform? Can you get it out of BigCommerce into a spreadsheet? And the answer is yes, absolutely. And so products, customer data, order history, content, we can get that stuff out, get it into a spreadsheet, and get it into Shopify. And it's not going to go directly and require some thought and some transformation, but as long as you can get it out in that spreadsheet, it's possible. It'll work. And so for BigCommerce specifically, there's quite a lot you can export and migrate this way. Your product catalog, the options, the images, and the SKUs, fabulous. Like that's the thing we need. If you only have 10 products, great. I mean, if you just copy paste it if you want, start over. But if you have 100 products, that's time consuming. 1,000 products, you're going to be at this for weeks. 500,000 products, which we've done. We have done Shopify stores with that many products. Now you don't have a choice. It has to be done via spreadsheet or via the API. You can also export your customers, get those across. You can export your orders, get those over, and your old 301 redirects. But out of the box, they're probably not going to make a ton of sense to Shopify. But it's good for whoever's in charge of SEO. And we'll talk about SEO. It's important. That's the thing that scares people. Now in Shopify, you could bulk import nearly everything. If either directly in Shopify or with a third-party tool. And so your collections, files, or orders, draft orders, discounts even, customers, custom collections, companies, blog posts, like on and almost everything. Really, I think the only thing you can't import is menus as link lists, right? You can't link lists, settings. I mean, like settings don't translate, policies, but you've got like 5-6 policies max that you copy paste, and you probably want to revisit those for Shopify anyway. Our tax settings, our app configurations, and customer account passwords. But there's an opportunity there. We'll talk about that as well. And so there's tools we use to make life easier with this. Number one by far is a tool called Matrixify, formerly known as Excelify. And we use that for these data imports. Everything I list is like, this is what you can import. It can do it. BigCommerce products in using Matrixify could be imported directly. You don't have to do any manual data transformation work on it. You can export that BigCommerce product catalog, take that CSV, drop it into Matrixify, and as long as it has BigCommerce in the name, it'll know, oh, these are BigCommerce products. I know what to do with this. And it'll translate it and drop it into Shopify. Now where it gets the other stuff that you'll have to manually do the data transformation on it, like orders. If you have all the past order data, Shopify's analytics will still work. Most of them, you'll be able to see your past revenue. You won't lose that stuff because it can figure it out based off that old order data. And there's some idiosyncrasies there, like in the BigCommerce, it doesn't specify which is when someone has multiple addresses stored, it doesn't specify, well, which is the primary. And so that's the only idiosyncrasy we've run into that you have to consider. ChatGPT can help a lot if you have to do these data transformations. You could get it to write. Giving it a giant spreadsheet is the wrong way to do it. That's where you'll get frustrated with ChatGPT. But you could give it a small sample of what you have and what you're trying to turn it into and say, hey, could you write a Python script for me that will do this transformation work, that will change the spreadsheet from what I have to what I want? And obviously you have to test it, but it works. We've been able to do this many times with a variety of data sets. And there are third-party migration automation services that exist that can help do this. Your mileage may vary. I've had good experiences and bad experiences. And early on, it was nice to have to be able to rely on something else to do it. But after a while, it became clear much better off doing it ourselves and figuring out the best way to do it. Now, data migration, it's mission critical, and so it's scary, it's stressful, but it's also quite manageable, right? Essentially you always have backups. Your worst case scenario is you have to start over. Because your existing store your existing BigCommerce store will stay online while you're building this new Shopify store, while you're doing this data migration. You're not at risk of losing data here. And so if you export data, import it, and go, oh shoot, like this isn't right, do it again. You'll get it right the second time, or maybe the third time. The catch is large data sets can take up to days to import into Shopify. Think about it. I mean, how many years old is your BigCommerce store? How many orders and customers and products are in there? Well, these could be huge volumes of data. And so it's not unusual for a data import to take days at a time. And so you can reduce that by, if there's any data you know is junk, is unnecessary, does not need to be moved over, especially usually product data in a large catalog, just exclude it. Get rid of that stuff. Don't include it. And start with small samples. If you can import 10 orders successfully, well, if it worked on 10, it'll very likely work on 10,000 orders. And so don't make yourself crazy trying to get it, move the entire catalog or whatever the data set is. Don't make yourself crazy trying to move the entire thing over and get it right on the first go. And that's one of my issues with the automation services is they tend to work in that manner. It's much better, much easier to say, okay, we've got 10, 50, 100 items here. Let's import that. Did it work right? Verify it for accuracy and try again. You want to keep verifying for accuracy. We did, we ran into an issue on a store where we imported everything and we'd verified it. And then at the last minute noticed that, in the orders, there were like 2 fields that were transposed and no one caught it. It's like, a phone number and something else got flipped. Shoot, got to do it again. But what you have the data from the old store, and so fixing it, re-importing it, not bad. It's totally fixable. And occasionally stuff like that happens. But when you work in that format of like large or small sample set, move on, go, you're good. So design and UX. That's the thing you have to recreate. You can't migrate it. Like the way BigCommerce handles themes is different than the way Shopify handles themes. All these platforms will have their own unique way of handling themes. And by themes and templates, we're referring to how the online store looks and works. What's that website look like? And so I would consider a migration as a redesign opportunity. If you're migrating, you likely have a current successful business that's been operating a while, and you probably didn't just recently redo your website. Websites, by 3 years in, they could start to look dated. By 4 years, probably. By 5 years, for sure, they look dated. And so depending on the age of the site, great. If you're considering a redesign, maybe migration is part of that too. We usually see these things go together. I can think of a single instance where we said, where the mandate was, we like the way it looks, recreate that. It happened once. Outside of that, it has always been redesign opportunity. And so use your experience to build the online store you wish you had, right? You know what works based on your current site, based on what you have. And there are very likely other sites where you're like, I like that site better. I wish my site looked more like that. That overlap of what you have that works and what you want. And then, best practice and what's available and practical. That in the overlap in that Venn diagram, that's what your website should be. That's the online store theme you want to build. And you're not starting from scratch. The Shopify theme store has, last I checked, 174 vetted templates, and some are free, some are paid. I love these. This is how we work. We don't build, we don't code from scratch. I don't think it's necessary. I don't think it's practical. I don't think it's a good idea anymore. Our absolute preferred way to work, find one of these premium themes that has been, that has the features you want, or most of the features you want, has the templates you want, or has the layout you want. And the advantage here is these themes have to work for all manner of different configuration for potentially thousands of different stores. And so they're highly configurable, and they've got all kinds of templates and features and settings figured out in advance so that you don't have to think about it. And then on top of it, you could choose, all right, if we find one we like, you could plug in all your branding and work with that, or you could customize it. And you could customize it by, hey, there's a few features we need to add to this theme, or by building entirely custom templates on top of it. But even then, if you're saying I want a fully custom look, that's header, footer, homepage, collection, which is category, product page, and cart. And so we really, five templates that need to get designed and built there, and then everything else could use what's static in the theme. Or maybe there's templates that you haven't thought of that you're not going to use yet, but they're in there and they're waiting and they're ready for when you do come across and have a time to do it. That's been our approach. I think it works pretty well. And so, word of caution, there are third-party marketplaces for Shopify themes and templates, and I don't trust them, and I've not had good experiences with them. I'm sure there are diamonds in the rough, and someone will tell me, well, I use this theme, and it's great. But I love that Shopify theme store for how strict it is on this is what a quality theme is. I mean, 174 themes, that sounds kind of low, doesn't it? It is because they are so picky. It is because it is curated, and because they attempt to have they don't have a bunch of redundant themes. And so I like those. I trust them. The other thing I think is important to remind ourselves, and we can all fall into this trap of perfection, right? That Voltaire quote, perfect is the enemy of done. Maybe it was perfect is the enemy of good. Either way, your customers aren't holding out for a perfect website. Ideally, it only has to be better than it was. And that's what you want, is that incremental improvement. You're not reinventing the wheel. Is it faster? Is it easier to use? Does it look nicer? Does it render better on mobile? Oh, can I pay faster? Well, like Shopify payments, buy now buttons. Yes, probably. It doesn't need to be perfect. It doesn't need to be absolutely brand new everything. It just needs to be better than it was to see that incremental improvement. Especially with launching, it doesn't have to be perfect to launch. And when it does go live, you can start using that customer feedback for ongoing optimizations. Look for those opportunities in what your customers tell you. Hey, I couldn't find this. Hey, this is what I was looking for. Or like, here's a common question that keeps popping up. All right, how do we design for that? How do we help people that are reaching out to us with questions, comments, issues? How do we go ahead and update the website to deal with that? And that process of continuous improvement keeps you on your toes. But the other problem is design evolves and trends change. And that's the thing no one can control for. And Shopify also continuously adds features. So I think no matter what, I would plan on upgrading, redesigning, or at least revisiting the theme you're on every 3 to 5 years. 5 years would really be a stretch. 3 years more reasonable. 4 if you've been good about staying on top of it. All right, SEO. This is when we talk to people about migrations. SEO is always the concern. Like, hey, we rank well. We get decent organic search from Google. How is this going to impact us? And it will impact you, but there are things you could do to shorten that cycle, to mitigate it. And I think the golden rule in a migration in regards to SEO is maintain the status quo, right? The more change that happens, that's what spooks Google, where they're like, what's going on here? What is this site? What's it about? We have to figure this out again. And so the less that changes, the less time they have to spend recrawling, revisiting, rethinking, recategorizing your website. And so for our pre-launch preparation, I think plan on migrating an absolute majority of your content. I know I had recommended, hey, if you can get rid of some stuff, do it, because it'll make life easier. But we still want most of it to come across. I think the table stakes, for sure you're setting up 301 redirects for everything. 301 redirect, meaning you're telling Google, this is the new, hey, that URL you're looking for, that's not missing. It's been moved to here. Like, we don't want those dead ends. We don't want page not found errors, 404 errors. So we set up all those 301 redirects. And in a huge catalog, that could be challenging to maintain. But it's doable and it's necessary. And then the other issue is H1 tags and metadata. That we found, that's a thing you got to compare and make sure those match as well, because that could really reduce some of this time for search engine ranking position to settle after a migration, where you'll see like stuff just bounces around for a couple weeks. And so you want to move everything across as best you can, and then go through and verify it, because that's where you've done these big bulk automation processes to import the data, move it across. But there's always going to be stuff that wasn't quite the same, but you could verify it. There's tools for this that we've found. Either we've had ChatGPT write Python scripts that can scrape and generate this data for us, or there are SEO tools that do it, like Screaming Frog is a good example. And in it, you can, because the live sites, your old BigCommerce store is still up, and so you have that reference, that comparison. And then at this point, your Shopify store will be available to you. It'll be behind a password, so customers can't see it, but that'll be available to you. And in it, you could scrape both sites. You could give a tool like Screaming Frog both URLs and have it compare it, and it'll go through and it'll tell you, okay, your meta title and description, your meta title is different. Your meta description is different. Your H1 tag is different. And so if you figure that out and fix those, then you're good. You're golden, right? Because to Google, they go, okay, yeah, this is definitely the same content. There's no weird black hat SEO shenanigans here. It's just a site that has moved a little bit. And that's the advantage. I normally don't obsess too much over SEO, but in a migration where we're just trying to minimize these total changes, this is the way to do it. And so once when the store goes live, the moment we've got that domain name moved across, you want to go into Google Search Console, which I'm assuming you have a Google Search Console account. If you don't, they're free, and submit your sitemap.xml file. Sitemap.xml file is a machine formatted file that you could convert to a spreadsheet if you want to get an index of your entire Shopify store easily. But you want to that file documents, specifies, this is every page on this site that should be publicly available. And you could submit that to Google Search Console, and that will help Google Search Console immediately pull in, all right, here's everything. Here are all the pages, all the URLs that we know of. And then you don't get a choice over how, when, and how long it takes Google to scrape the site, but this is the way to ensure it happens as quickly and as efficiently as possible, and surface any potential errors. We've not run into any errors, but why risk it? And so Google Search Console is your friend here. And if there's no reason not to do use the Fetch as Google tool to verify indexability. Fetch as Google is where it's going to show you, this is what this page looks like to Google. If it's a blank page, that's bad. If it's got, you could see the full content of the page. Okay, now we can breathe easier. We know things are working. And again, we've never run into an issue with this, but if you're worried about it, that's the way to go. And then in the following weeks, there will probably be pages that are missing, that didn't get redirected. There's always going to be a few. And so just check what pages are not found. There's even apps that'll do it in the Shopify App Store that'll show you a list and then make it really easy to create the URL redirect. And then in Google Search Console, just check the crawl stats, and it'll tell you, like, here's the total number of pages that are submitted, here's the total number of pages that are indexed. And then you'll know right away, okay, we're good here. Google has found all our new pages. Now, there's one thing we have not migrated yet. Ooh, it's customer passwords. What do we do about these customer passwords? And so you absolutely should not be able to migrate customer passwords because they're stored encrypted. It just is not portable data. Any platform that would let you export the passwords is fundamentally insecure. And even if you could export them, you're not going to be able to import them into Shopify. So the solution is we're going to make your customers do the work for you. And Shopify is an app. This was a Shopify Plus exclusive. It's called the Bulk Account Inviter. And you can use that to bulk invite customers to activate their accounts on your store. And I think this is a great opportunity to introduce the customers to the new store. If you're in, potentially a soft launch way, customers, most stores don't require customer accounts and passwords. Yours probably doesn't. And so these are some of our more diehard customers. If we want to stagger it as a soft launch, import the first 10%. And when that doesn't surface any errors, okay, now do the rest or do 50%. But you need a good customer account invite that explains what's going on. So this is the template. This is the default template that Shopify sends out. You can style this. Shopify gives you access to the customer notification templates. You can edit those. And I think a message like, we're excited to announce that our new store has moved to Shopify for a better shopping experience, and your account's been migrated to a new platform. All you have to do is activate it. And so when they click activate their account, that's going to move them. They're going to go into Shopify. They're going to be able to set their password, and then they should be good to go. They should even see past orders in there as well. At this point, I think that's it. I think you're live on Shopify. Everything's moved across. Your SEO is handled, and your customers have been invited to check out your new store. So what do we do now? Well, my litmus test, my rule of thumb is I want that first organic order to hit. I'm going to hold my breath until a random person from the internet comes to our site and makes a purchase successfully. When that happens, that is such a great litmus test of, yes, this works. We've done it right. We're okay. And of course, you want to place your own test orders, but test orders, you know what you're doing, right? I want the person who just came from the internet. It's like, what am I doing here? What is this? And they make the purchase. I think the other really important thing to do is monitor support channels. Your customer service reps are your first line of QA defense. Often they're the most familiar with the website. So we'll usually, before the site goes live, we will enlist the customer support people. I'll be like, hey, here's a list of URLs. Here's how you're going to submit issues you see. Run through the site and just note anything weird on your site, and encourage them to use a variety of devices. That way you really you're not just in some test suite. It's like whatever random tablet, phone, laptop they happen to have, they can use. I want to throw a little chaos in there in my testing to make it more real. But you also have to support your support team, right? They are the ones who, when the site goes live and people have questions and order issues, etc., they're the ones who have to handle it. And for them, they probably didn't get a choice in this. They didn't get to say, they just found out, oh, we're moving to a new platform, have fun. So for them, all they heard was, I have to learn a new system. I've got homework here, and this might suck. What if it's bad? They don't know. And so we usually will do like a training session on Zoom for an hour with the CSRs, where we'll run through just like, hey, here's some common tasks and how you do those in Shopify, and feel free to stop me, talk me through it. And that is hugely helpful. And then even recording that so they have it as a reference as well could be very helpful. But they're the ones who are going to be first aware of issues that occur on the site. So make sure that you're checking in with them and they have a way to provide that feedback. I think with any new theme launch, any new site launch, there's a 30-day shakedown that occurs. In that first 30 days, you're going to uncover any missed issues, any problems. And I think if you follow this process, they're going to be minor. It's going to be like, oh, hey, this line break's weird. Hey, there's this one esoteric piece of content we forgot. And then at the same time, your search rankings will settle as Google indexes the site. And the feedback we get is, hey, this is so much easier. I wished we'd migrated sooner. And I say 30 days, but as far as like the issues go, the first week, the first 72 hours is going to be when you uncover anything that needs to be handled. And so on day 31, that's when you could shut down your BigCommerce store, right? This whole time, we have left it up this whole time so that if we need it as a backup, we have it. It becomes like we have this failover option. We have this safety net, and we've never had to use it. And so I think day 31, when you're comfortable, you're confident, maybe run one last export, and then you could shut the account down. So my final thoughts. If you want to migrate, but it seems daunting, it seems scary, just remind yourself you're not the first person or business to migrate platforms. And challenges you run into in your migration, not only are they solvable, you'll be able, the chances are someone has already solved them in the past. And so you'll be able to access that and find it. And in the case of Shopify Plus, when you do a migration with them, they have a launch engineer who will help support you as well, where you say, hey, we've got this issue. How have other people handled this? And they'll be able to draw on their experience and assist you with that. But I think the reason to do it, the overall outcome is embracing change can lead to positive business improvements through that halo effect we talked at the top of the top of the hour. When I'm no longer feeling hampered, bottlenecked, limited by my platform, and when I've opened up access to new native integrations, apps, partners, etc., suddenly it feels like the sky's the limit. We're going to be able to start scaling that business again. If you have questions now, I'm happy to go over them, but or if you want to save it and shoot me an email, absolutely, please do. I'm happy to help. And of course, if you just want some passive info, want to listen and hear other people's success stories, please check out the Unofficial Shopify podcast.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. Thank you, Kurt.
Thank you.